Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, and making his Beyond the Arc CBS Sports Network debut from CBSSports.com. Sam Quinn is here. Welcome to both of you. Bill, Sam was asking me, do I dress for the normal show or do I dress for like I'm going on network? And I told him, we're casual. I wish in retrospect that I had not told him and there could have been like a light dusting, a little hazing, and he would have shown up in a full suit.
Okay. Did you tell him that you brushed out the mustache and put a little gloss on there too? Just like that's where it gets fancy, Sam. That's where you gotta focus the attention for the John Gonzalez drip.
John, we've had this conversation on the Standard podcast too. I just think you're much more interested in my sartorial choices than I am.
I like anything that you're throwing at us, Sam, and Bill is a big fan of the mustache, so we're all on accord here. First time we've done a three-person show. Later in the show, some weird developments in the NBA last night, which prompted a segment we're going to call, Oh No. The trade deadline is less than a month away, so we'll discuss the latest on Jimmy Butler and take a look at the potential buyers, sellers, and who else might be on the move. And then big Oklahoma City Cavs clash tonight. We're going to preview that and give our predictions, and then we'll do team of the night at the end of the show, as we generally do. But first, for both of you, Zion returned last night in a home loss to the Wolves. Played 28 minutes, 22 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block, kind of all over the box score here, Bill. He was out for a while and has been limited because of hamstring injuries, nagging hamstring injuries. Just his 7th game of the season. But that said, he looked pretty good.
He looked amazing. Sam, you're probably going to go numbers heavy and positive. So let me be the doomsday, glass half full, Debbie Downer, dark cloud of it. Yes, he was awesome. He looked amazing. They are outstanding when he plays. But this reminds me, and Sam, you may be too young for this, John, you won't be, of the famous George W. Bush quote that he mangled. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. I don't know what's going on. Don't fool me again. I don't want to be fooled anymore. We are in year 6 of the Zion experience. This team has not won a playoff series. It is true with Zion. It is true that he played 70 games last year, but wasn't able to make it through the play-in and actually play in that playoff series against the Thunder. Now, they probably would have lost that, but he was outstanding up until that point. And so, yes, you're right, John. He was amazing. He was dynamic. They are, by most measurements, if you go back and look at his time with the Pelicans, when he plays, they're often a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense and look like a top 2 or 3 or 4 team in the Western Conference. So I love that he's back. But until we can start to believe, or I can start to believe, I'll speak for myself, that Zion is going to be able to consistently play an entire season and a postseason, it feels like more of the same. And these flashes of well, I think it's greatness we saw last night, what he's capable of, it just feels like a tease without an ending until I see something differently in terms of the actual end product at the end of a season.
Yeah, Bill, I haven't been fooled twice. I've been fooled 7 times, 8 times. I'm going to get fooled a 9th time. When you score 22 points in 28 minutes in your first game in a few months, that's pretty encouraging. There's a reason that all of this hype exists in the first place, right? Even when he's hobbled, even when he's coming back from an injury, he's still one of the best rim scorers in the NBA, maybe the second best behind Giannis. They're 7-30. So let's not go too crazy. It's exciting to see him healthy. And ultimately, I think the Pelicans, even in light of this unexpected tank, would prefer to have him on the court, well-conditioned, potentially getting ready for next year, which is a weird thing to say in January, than to have him out. But he looked good. I'm sorry, when you have somebody with MVP talent, of course there are going to be the injury concerns. Of course you're scared when he misses as much time as he does, but he looked good.
He looked good.
He always looks good when he plays.
Yeah, he does. Some things about that, though, because, he went out there and he played, but his health concerns obviously are pronounced. He played 70 games last season before he got hurt, but he's averaged just 46 games in his first 4 seasons. So, Bill, I'm with you that, I want to see it more here. And then beyond that, Sam, you said he was a MVP level player. I take a little bit of umbrage with that just because I haven't seen his game evolve. Now, we haven't seen him on the court enough for his game to evolve, but since he came into the league, there really hasn't been an expansion of his game. He is what he is. Yeah, he's awesome at the rim, but he's shooting, 25% from 3 this season. He's never been good at that. He's been a terrible free throw shooter. Bill, we're going to do trade deadline stuff later on, and I don't think that the Pelicans would move him this year, but at some point, do they start thinking about it? He's got 3 more years left on his contract. He hasn't been available. And again, I haven't seen him expand his game in the way that some other of his contemporaries have.
I love this Zion shade, right? I'm throwing some health wise. You're throwing some from an evolution perspective. Sam's trying to hold, right? Hold the line. So my understanding on this is that David Griffin's thinking. David Griffin is obviously the general manager in New Orleans and the guy that gave him this extension. Griff wants Zion to be there for the reasons that Sam's talking about. I do think this is a big if. If he's out there and he's healthy, I think he is an MVP level player. And I think, John, he can evolve. And I think if you're that, let's be frank, if you're the New Orleans market, you've seen two generational players force their way out in Chris Paul and Anthony Davis. They've been able to actually bring in through the draft the right guys and not keep them. You're not bringing another person to the ball who's any prettier, a better dancer, a better date than Zion, most likely over the coming years. And so my understanding is their plan is to try to build a winner and convince him to stay. And their concern is that there will be an opportunity or a moment where they have to move him, not because they choose to, but because if he can get a run of play where his market value is high enough, they do worry in New Orleans that eventually, if they give him an out, that he's going to force his way out. Now, the Knicks were always sort of the apple of his eye. That doesn't make sense now. But I think that if he moves in the coming years, I think it's not a surprising outcome. But I think it'll be because Zion wants it to be so, not because an organization that feels trapped that they have to just hope he can be healthy moves on from him. I think they know they're trapped and hoping that he can stay on the court and that then he'll stay in New Orleans.
Yeah, Bill, I think you brought up a really important point that the Pelicans have already lost two players of this ilk with Chris Paul and Anthony Davis. There is a certain segment of the league, it's a pretty big segment, that just doesn't have access to talents like Zion Williamson outside of the lottery, right? Like if you're Charlotte, if you're Indiana, if you're a team like that, players like Zion just don't become available to you that often, maybe even ever. So if he is available at the deadline, it does make sense for teams like that to really explore acquiring him, even in light of all of the injury issues. But I think I agree with David Griffin here. If you're the Pelicans, like I know you've had Chris Paul and Anthony Davis, there's no guarantee that there's a fourth talent like that coming through the pipeline. I'm holding on to him. I'm building around him. There are other moves that they can make. I don't want to be the GM that gave up on Zion Williamson right before he became the player we all thought he was going to be when he got drafted number one.
Can I just add real quick? It's such a great point because I don't know if this is true, but I know it's true that David Griffin worries. This is true. David Griffin worries that if he moves on from Zion, it is much more likely to cost him his job than if he holds on to Zion. And let's be frank, in the reality of trying to keep your job as a GM or even a head coach, but mostly a GM in the NBA, you're operating hopefully in the best interest of your organization, but you're also operating under your own best interest. If you're David Griffin and Zion's hurt, your owner understands that. If you're David Griffin and Zion's healthy, your owner's happy with you. If your owner, to Sam's point, if you're David Griffin and Zion's healthy and he's healthy with the Brooklyn Nets or some other team, you're fired. And so I do think that's an important component as well.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I also think that if you're David Griffin, you probably want to see what this was going to look like, right? Because, Bill, when we did our preseason previews for this, we were both pretty high on the Pelicans. And like, there's a parallel universe where the entire team doesn't get hurt and you have Zion available for some portion of the season. You could see this version of the Pelicans making a little bit of noise in the Western Conference because aside from Oklahoma City, who we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show, the rest of the West has been up and down basically all season. The Rockets have been ahead of the curve, as we discussed on yesterday's show. The Grizzlies, when Ja's out there, have been great, but have been, hopeful that he would return. And then the Nuggets have had their issues. Dallas has injuries. The Lakers have been up and down, go up and down the Western Conference. And I could see this version of the Pelicans, if fully healthy, actually doing something. So yeah, if I was David Griffin, I'd probably want to just see this a little bit longer before I decided to make some moves. We're going to take a quick break. And then on the other side, as I mentioned, weird stuff happened last night. We're going to get into a little oh no chat. And then the trade deadline is less than a month away. We'll discuss that as well. You're watching Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Just a reminder, you can get us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Please download, subscribe, leave a review, and then on Spotify, if you look below the play button on the Spotify app in full screen mode, you can leave us a comment, tell us what you think about the show. All right, so last night, we're all watching basketball. We have a group chain between me and Bill and our podcast producer, Aaron, and Aaron texted us "Oh no, Suns!" exclamation point, to which Bill responded, "Oh no, Lakers!" exclamation point, and then I responded, "Oh no, Golden State!" exclamation point. So the Suns lost at the Hornets. The Lakers lost at the Mavs without Luka and Kyrie and Daniel Gafford, and then the Warriors lost at home to the Heat without Jimmy Butler after getting blown out at home by the Kings without De'Aaron Fox. So Sam, we'll start with you. Of those three, which is the biggest oh no loss?
Yeah, that Laker game was a real red flag. The Mavericks, no Luka, no Kyrie, no Daniel Gafford, and they were on the second night of a back-to-back. That game was really emblematic of problems that the Lakers have had all year when it comes to just effort. The Lakers were really sleepwalking through the first half. They fall down double digits, they pick it up for a few minutes, and then all of a sudden the Mavericks make 4 threes and the game is basically out of hand. LeBron is 40. It makes sense for him to pace himself, to maybe not go all out for entire games. One of the big problems that the Lakers have is that he's really the only culture setter on that team. So when he does that, the guys who aren't in their 40s are also kind of doing that as well, and they play down to the level of their opponents, and all of a sudden you have winnable games slipping through your fingers. So I think as the Lakers go into the trade deadline, it'd be pretty helpful if they could get another culture setter, somebody who can make sure they play hard when they're playing in these winnable games against injured opponents.
Bill, I'm torn on this. You should never lose to the Hornets if you're the Suns and you have aspirations of doing anything. You shouldn't lose to Dallas without Luka and Kyrie. And I don't know what's going on with the Warriors, so sell me on this.
Yeah, look, in our chat, it was oh no exclamation point, and to your point, it should be oh no multiple exclamation points for each team. I'll go Lakers too, though I'm going to gently push back on Sam's analysis a little bit here because they need to get a culture setter. As someone who's covered LeBron, I can tell you it's an easy narrative to say LeBron, veteran. He's not a culture setter. He's not a good culture setter. I think that's part of the reason, Sam and John, that we're seeing some of the cracks in the Lakers. LeBron has always been a divisive figure in the NBA, respected, absolutely beloved by his colleagues. The true answer is no. Beloved by his teammates. The true answer is sometimes no. He's a tough guy to play with for a lot of reasons, and I would argue as someone who's covered him, and so would people who have played with him or who have managed him in front offices, he's so talented that he can overcome what is always not the most harmonious locker room in the world, I think, until now. And so I'm with you, Sam. I think they need some sort of improvement in terms of setting the culture, but I think it's in large part because of LeBron. LeBron got to pick his own head coach, which means JJ's voice is not going to resonate the same way it would because it's not an independent voice. And LeBron's not old enough or not good enough anymore. He's certainly old enough to be able to put on his shoulders whatever issues there are, including, I think, some of the culture issues that come with playing with LeBron James. It should be Anthony Davis, but if you go into a Lakers locker room, you'll notice every time AD, this is a small thing, but tries to talk, it's his turn with the scrum, LeBron's yelling or shouting or throwing water bottles. And so I think it's the bigger loss because I'm with Sam. It shows something. It shows cracks that are already there. And I think it's in part, as talented as LeBron remains at 40 and as talented as Anthony Davis is, I'm not sure this team has a togetherness and a vibe or a chemistry, whatever you want to call it, as any team needs to if they're good enough to make the top 6 and they think they're good enough to make a run to the conference finals. And with LeBron's inability to make up for that talent-wise the way that he could 3 or 4 years ago, you see nights, I think, sometimes like last night.
You guys are convincing me on the Lakers. I mean, before the game, Anthony Davis called it a must-win, and then they did not. I guess it's pretty telling as well that none of us are even discussing the Suns, like how far expectations have plummeted for them. They just changed up their rotation, and then they go and lose to the YOLO Hornets with LaMelo Ball just throwing passes to himself off the backboard last night. I don't know if you guys saw that, which is ridiculous. I think I'm going to go Warriors, though, because they got blown out on their floor by the Kings without De'Aaron Fox. And then they lost to the Heat without Jimmy Butler, who are in just disarray. And we're going to talk about Jimmy in just a second here. Like, I don't know what's going on with the Warriors, but that is a pretty worrying moment, especially where afterwards Steve Kerr comes out and goes, look, Steph is having a hard time with the way that we're playing right now and his emotions and the losing, and he's not dealing with it well. And like, if you have Steve Kerr saying that publicly after 2 brutal losses where you lose on your floor by a combined 46 points to 2 teams you should not be losing to, that's a danger moment. That's not great.
Yeah, John, I know what's wrong with the Warriors. It's pretty straightforward. They only have one guy who can score. They brought in Dennis Schroeder thinking he was going to fix the secondary offense problems, and he didn't. And ironically, they played a team in the Heat that sort of has a similar issue with Jimmy Butler out. The Heat weren't just on a back-to-back last night. They played 2 overtimes on Monday, and they still came in on Tuesday and ran the Warriors off the court with Nikola Jovic playing great, with a whole team structure working in a way that the Warriors were intended to. Steph was great. Nobody else could put the ball through the rim. It's kind of that simple.
Can I do a quick bonus? Oh, no. I won't give you the 19 I thought of, but if you're the NBA on TNT, and Adam Silver has basically made it his mission to make sure nationally televised games have all the players that are supposed to be there, what an oh-no night last night was. The Mavs have basically three of their 3 most important players are gone. But then Nikola Jokic, okay, at least we have the best player on earth. This is a great matchup. This is a big game. Oh no, I got the flu or whatever. I'm sure it was. It was an oh no night for everybody in the NBA, John.
Yeah, it really was. Joker evidently out with an illness. We'll see if he ends up playing in tonight's game. We mentioned Jimmy Butler and the Heat and the drama going on there. Trade deadline less than a month away. So we're going to check in on Jimmy Butler here. First, we're going to just revisit the comments that he gave to the media. Somebody in the Miami Heat organization, as Bill and I discussed after his last game before he was suspended, was like, yeah, sure, Jimmy, you can go to the podium. Terrible idea. Great content for us. Here's what he had to say.
I want to see me get my joy back from playing basketball. And wherever that may be, we'll find out here pretty soon. But I want to get my joy back. I'm happy here, off the court. But I want to be back to somewhat dominant. I want to hoop, and I want to help this team win. Right now, I'm not doing that.
Can you get your joy back here on the court?
Probably not.
Probably not. Not surprisingly, suspended for 7 games right after that. The NBAPA filed an appeal. We'll see if he recoups any of that money. Bill, what have you heard about this lately?
By the way, that clip still shocks me, and it obviously is not new. So I've talked to some folks with the Suns, and their perspective would be best described in an analogy my wife would not love, but she's a librarian and she's at work. And I'm not single, but if I were, I would love to date Scarlett Johansson. That doesn't make it even remotely possible. The physics of the universe aren't going to allow that. And you talk to people in Phoenix, that's sort of the vibe you get. I talked to somebody the other day, and they're like, yeah, they would love to have Jimmy Butler. You have to be able to unpack Bradley Beal. That's what, and they would love to get rid of Beal. I mean, yeah, it would be a godsend. It would be the equivalent of a single man being able to walk up to Scarlett Johansson and believe that accurately. They could say, do you want to have a drink? And she would do anything other than laugh in your face when she was single. I don't think it's realistic, guys. I don't, maybe it will be, maybe they can make Jimmy Butler or Beal miserable enough. Maybe I'm not aware of the way that the Heat evaluate Beal, although I've had those conversations too, and they didn't seem particularly excited about the notion of that kind of a trade. I know what Jimmy Butler reportedly wants. I just don't see how this makes any sense for the people in play here who'd have to be able to make this happen and unspool a player in Beal and his salary who has a no trade clause that it would require for this deal to even be something we could talk about as realistic.
Yeah, logistically.
Yeah, Bill, I'm with you on this, Bill. I just don't know. Even if you could get Bradley Beal to waive the no trade clause, who's taking that contract? That's another 2 years of supermax money for a player who's not averaging 20 points per game. There was some reporting that Jimmy was telling teams, I think the Bucks were in there, the Grizzlies were in there, hey, don't trade for me. He's really pushing for Phoenix. I wonder if this plays out the way that the Damian Lillard trade request worked out, where he was saying Miami, Miami, Miami forever. The Heat couldn't get a package together, and all of a sudden the Bucks swoop in at the end and take him. Are we going to get to February 4th, February 5th, February 6th, and the Suns aren't going to have a plausible trade on the board? So Jimmy has to go back and say, well, maybe I'll reconsider the Grizzlies. Maybe I'll go to the Bucks without an extension. Maybe I'll go to this team or that team, because you're right, Bill, this just isn't plausible.
Yeah, I mean, logistically, the Suns, it would be very difficult to pull that off. And also, if you're Jimmy and you keep talking about you want to get your joy back and you want to win, the Suns aren't exactly killing it right now. I'm not sure that that's a much better situation for you. As Sam mentioned, there's been reporting, Chris Haynes pointed out that the Grizz have been told, don't trade for Jimmy Butler. He doesn't want to go there. He's 35 years old, though. He's missed a third of his games this season. He's averaged just 58 games in his first 5 seasons with the Heat. He's got that player option for $52.4 million, and he's made a lot of noise everywhere he's gone. I mean, Jimmy Butler is still a very good player, but I wonder, with all the baggage, and he's going to want an extension. It's like 3 for $100 million, something that you really want to give Jimmy Butler at this stage in his career. So just to go over, if you take the Suns off the board, Bill, the Warriors reportedly aren't interested now, even though we all believe that would be a good landing spot for them, and he could certainly use, or they could certainly use the help in a player of his caliber. The Grizz off the board. Where do we think he might wash up?
All right, with the caveat, it only takes one. It takes one team, it takes one GM to do something, and the thing can happen. But nothing makes sense to me for the reasons that you said. In my conversations with people, and I haven't talked to everybody, but in my conversations, the concerns you have can be and has been disruptive. Look, can be great in the playoffs, is a great player, can be great. But we know that. That's why we're having the talk. But can be and has been disruptive and is being disruptive right now, by the way, of a Heat team that think that they're a contender. We can laugh at that, but they view themselves as a legitimate sort of interesting team if they can avoid the play-in, and he's disrupting what they're about. You noted doesn't have a track record of being reliable in terms of his health. Didn't play in the playoffs last year, which started this whole thing with Pat Riley when Butler said, had I been there, we would have beat the Celtics. And Riles basically told him to shut up in Pat Riley's end of season press conference. I don't have a good answer for you because desperation is what is required. All of these things are known factors. Everyone you talk to in the NBA and every front office knows what you're getting with Jimmy. It's a handful. Even if you like the good things, he is viewed as a handful. And so there has to be a team who feels like our window is now. We can move on from whatever pieces it takes to get Jimmy Butler because either we feel like we have them to give or we don't care. We need to win. That doesn't feel like Houston because I don't know why you'd bring this guy into this team and disrupt what you're building. That's just my perspective. It certainly reportedly isn't what the Warriors want, though that would make more sense because there is, as Sam noted, only one guy who can score with that team. And we have heard publicly now that Steph Curry is frustrated and put out because his window is closing. Outside of those two places, just in terms of the ability to do it, guys, I don't have a good answer for you. I think Milwaukee's interesting if you could sort of make it work because I do know that John Horst was feeling the GM there an immense amount of pressure when they go off to that, whatever it was, 2-9, 2-10 start. They've obviously righted the ship a little bit, but there is some pressure on people in Milwaukee, and that is an organization that's paying multiple coaches a lot of money, including Doc Rivers, a lot of money now. So maybe Milwaukee could make sense. But I think the list is thin, and I think it is thin enough that Jimmy Butler probably doesn't have the ability to force his way where he wants to go because I don't think there is a robust market for his services.
No, I don't think so either. And it is thin. And it's going to be fascinating to see where he washes up. There are a lot of other, he's just one name though, as the trade deadline approaches, a lot of other names that we want to discuss. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll look at some of those other names that could be on the move prior to the trade deadline, as well as which teams are under pressure to make a move. That's coming up on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc, discussing the rapidly approaching trade deadline. I want to get into some teams that are under pressure probably to make some moves. We had our Oh No segment earlier in the show. The Lakers did not play well last night. They've had an up and down season. The Warriors have had an up and down season. We were discussing how Steph Curry looked great last night, put up 8 threes, and they still got smacked, Bill. That never used to happen. And then you've got the Sixers, and I know you love to tease me on this show about them, but they want to made wholesale changes in the offseason, and Joel Embiid just cannot stay healthy. Paul George, like so many players before him, goes to Philadelphia, forgets how to shoot after having a career-best shooting season, both from the floor and from 3 last season with the Clippers. So of these 3 teams, who do you think is under the most pressure to make an addition at the trade deadline?
I think the Lakers are under the most pressure by the standard definition of the word because LeBron wants to win now, and that's an organization that always thinks they're closer than they are. They have constant beer goggles. They look at the Larry O'Brien Trophy and they see it so much closer to than it actually is. But I think my answer would be the Warriors because I think they correctly understand their situation. They correctly assess that Steph is still good enough. He is still good enough to be the best player in a championship level team. I'm not sure that's true for LeBron. Steph is, and he doesn't have the help that he needs, and they know that, and he has, I don't know what you guys think, but for me, it's, let's be optimistic. I love Steph. 2 or 3 years left of being a player you can build a critical player you can build a championship around. And because they haven't used Kuminga properly, because they have, Moses Moody or some other guys that maybe have some value out there, and because you have Andrew Wiggins' contract, there is the ability to make a move. And I think the proper reasons to see about doing that if you can get the right thing in return.
Yeah, at least the Lakers have plausible deniability, right? Like they did trade for Dorian Finney-Smith. They can go to LeBron and say, well, we tried. We filled what we thought was the biggest need. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we swung. The Sixers have a much wider time horizon here because Tyrese Maxey is young, Jared McCain is young. They have picks, they have pivots. You look at the Warriors and it's just what are you guys doing? You have one of the 10 best players of all time playing like one of the 10 best players of all time, and you're just squandering it for no good reason. This isn't the Lakers who only have 2 first-round picks to trade. They have their picks to work with. They have Kuminga. They had Podziemski. They refused to trade those guys for Lauri Markkanen in the offseason. They tried to get Paul George. That was more on the Clippers. But, guys, you may go another 50 years and never have another Stephen Curry. Players like this are extraordinarily rare. He's by far the best player in franchise history. You don't know when another one is coming through the pipeline. This 2 timeline thing has gone up in flames, right? They couldn't extend Kuminga in the offseason. It's very unclear what his future looks like. Podziemski, after a very promising rookie year, has done basically nothing this year. You have to do something, if only because when are you going to get another chance like this? The Lakers can at least talk themselves into, oh, we're the Lakers. Somebody's going to want to come here and we can adjust. We can go from there. If you're the Warriors, you don't do anything. That's just a season that goes up in flames.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that the Warriors really need to make a move. And you mentioned Kuminga and Podziemski, and especially in the offseason where they decided not to extend Kuminga, you would expect right now, at a time where their season hangs in the balance, that the Warriors would be looking around everywhere to find some sort of move. And Dennis Schroeder is not it. It's not enough, right? They absolutely need more scoring. Bill's more of a Kuminga guy than I am. I just haven't seen enough development in his game that it would be an impediment to me moving him. I would package him with whatever you need to package to bring in help for Steph Curry, because when you have Steph Curry after a game being completely despondent and Steve Kerr saying, yeah, he's not taking this so well, you got to fix that post-haste, Bill.
Can I real quick just praise Sam Quinn, because I look for new and creative ways to inject positivity about the Sixers on John, and now I've got longer timeline horizon. And John, that's going to be on every podcast we do for the rest of your life. I agree with Sam. It's another mark of positivity, and I'm with you guys on the Warriors. And Sam, you nailed it. The multi plan, right? We're going to do the now, we're going to do the later, works so poorly that I see Bob Myers at games as an ESPN analyst and not the general manager, because had that worked out, he's probably still there. He got off of a ship that he had steered, let's be frank, to the wrong place and left Mike Dunleavy Jr. in a really difficult situation. And that means now you have to do the difficult thing. And I think some of the reality is you have to go to your very confident, some would say arrogant ownership group and owner and say, I know we had this plan. I know you think we could bridge this. We can't. We need to move on these young guys and get as much greatness, as many titles, or at least shots at titles as we can from the remaining years of Steph Curry. And you're right, I am a Kuminga guy. Now, I think it's also true that Steve Kerr has mismanaged his development and the minutes earlier in his career, and we get into that whole conversation. So while there's still some value, and there is, and while there's still some GMs who think the Warriors screwed up Kuminga, but if they can get their hands on him, he'll have value, and those people exist, it's probably time to unspool him from that team along with some other pieces and bring in some help.
I just want to mention,
Bill, I think you made a really. Oh, go ahead, John.
No, I just love that the take for you two about the Philadelphia 76ers is the team that hasn't made a conference finals since 2001. They've got plenty of time, and you can't rush these things. Is that what you guys are telling me?
That's what Sam is telling me, and I'm buying it. I'm in. I'm sold. Let's go Sixers 2027.
Okay, remember who we're comparing them to here, right? LeBron is 40. Anthony Davis is 31 and gotten hurt a million times. Steph and Draymond mid-30s. At least the Sixers have Maxey and McCain, who are relatively young, right? Embiid and George, maybe they're lost causes. I'm not willing to go quite that far. At least the Sixers have some young guys, right? At least we can talk themselves into, oh, they still have picks. They got all this stuff for James Harden. They can pivot if they need to. For the Lakers and the Warriors, it's kind of, no, these are our guys. These are our cores. We're either winning with them or we're rebuilding. There's no in between. There's a middle ground for the Sixers that doesn't exist for these other teams.
That sound you hear is everybody in Philadelphia hurling whiskey bottles at their televisions while you guys are talking about optimism with the Sixers. Whiskey bottles being standard issue when it comes to the Sixers in Philly. All right, let's talk about just some players here because, we're all waiting for the Jimmy Butler shoe to drop, but there's some other ones that I think are also on the horizon. Zach LaVine, the Bulls have been trying to get off of his contract forever. He's actually having a really good season. The Pelicans, Brandon Ingram, they were trying to find a contract extension for him this offseason. They didn't get there. They're having a bad season. He could be somebody who's on the move. CJ McCollum quietly having a pretty good shooting season. He could be somebody that they might want to unplug. And then some lesser pieces like Jordan Clarkson, Jonas Valanciunas, maybe Nurk from the Suns. The Blazers got a whole host of guys that they should probably get rid of. Bill, who do you have your eye on for maybe some of these smaller names that might be on the move?
Yeah, I think McCollum's a name that I've heard from a couple GMs, just who is viewed with a lot of respect. He's a professional. He's having a better shooting season. And the culture building you were talking about, Sam, he's not a superstar at this point of his career. Kind of was, or at least he was in Portland. But I think on a lot of levels, that's someone there's going to be a market for him. And I think, I'm told at least, keep an eye on the Western Conference. That there might be kind of like what Hemingway wrote about how you go broke, is how these deals might get done. It might happen very slowly and then all at once, because the bunched together reality, I'm told, of the Western Conference. The fact, and John, you made this point too, that there's one team in the West that you really fear. It's the Thunder. And everybody else from 2, depending on how generous you want to be, to 11 or 12, you can kind of look at in a very similar light. That's going to create an opportunity where a lot of teams see themselves as a piece away, even a small piece away, from being able to make a big jump. And I know that as much as you love the Rockets, John, the view out there is they're going to be really dangerous in the years ahead, but I don't know anybody I've talked to who views them as a real contender right now this season, right? And so that's another team that's sort of at the top and largely healthy and largely put together, where you're like, all right, I don't have to worry about those guys either. So LaVine to Denver, not a move that I would make, but if you're the Nuggets, I think you can always convince yourself you're one piece away because of who your star player is, but especially in this reality, this climate in the Western Conference. I think Brandon Ingram, I have not heard a lot about him having a huge market, but again, I think that people will be able to talk themselves into moves like him or Sam, maybe other people, because there are so many teams in the West that are probably a small run or maybe one nice player away from feeling like they're markedly better than most of their contemporaries in that conference.
You bring up Brandon Ingram. I think he's such an interesting player on this market because he's getting dictated not by who he is as a player, but by what sort of contract the league expects him to want on his next deal. He's an unrestricted free agent this offseason. I go to the Lakers for Brandon Ingram and I say, he doesn't make much sense on a LeBron team, but if you're the Lakers and you don't feel like you have a chance at the title this year, Bill, I know you mentioned the beer goggles. I think they're pretty realistic in knowing that this year probably isn't a title year. Maybe you trade for Brandon Ingram thinking he can eventually replace LeBron as kind of our core scoring forward. And then I look at the Nuggets. They're the swing team here. I think what makes them so interesting is that Michael Porter Jr. has simultaneously been a pretty big disappointment on his max contract. And he also fills a really unique, hard to fill role as a bigger shooter because they take the fewest threes in the NBA, and yet he is their highest volume three-point shooter. If you replace him with somebody like Jimmy Butler, yeah, you do get the size, but you lose a bunch of shooting. You replace him with Zach LaVine, you get the shooting, but you get way, way smaller. The Nuggets are trying to thread a needle here where they have to improve talent-wise. That roster around Jokic is not good enough to win another title right now, but they have to do it in such a way that they don't create some gaping hole somewhere else. I would be interested in Zach LaVine. I would just be interested in Zach LaVine from the perspective of, can we find another forward somewhere else? Is Peyton Watson ready for a bigger role? Because, man, if you're playing a Murray and LaVine backcourt, you're getting really small really quickly.
Those will be some big moves. Just as a quick one on the margins that's probably only on my radar, this will probably amuse Bill. The Orlando Magic have quietly had a really successful season, despite the fact he's laughing at me already because I'm the only person who talks about the Magic. But Franz Wagner has been out for a large chunk. Mo Wagner is out completely. Paolo is apparently, Sam flagged this earlier while we were in the break, is apparently getting close to coming back. They are offensively challenged. I would just love to. I've been calling for them to get more offense forever, as has everybody else. A guy like Jordan Clarkson would be very useful for them. I would like to gift them somebody like that who could be instant offense for the Orlando Magic. All right, quick break. And then on the other side, we got a big one in the league tonight. Oklahoma City against the Cavs, best team in the West, against, by record, the best team in the NBA. We're going to preview and predict that one. On the other side, this is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Just a reminder that you can find us on YouTube at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe. Little bell symbol. You click on that, you'll get notified when we go live. We're going to be live tonight following the conclusion of the Oklahoma City Cavs game. Super excited for this. First time since 1971-72 that two teams have won 30 of their first 35 games. And Bill, this is also the first time ever that a team on a 10-game winning streak, the Cavs, is facing a team on a 15-game winning streak, Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, I should mention, because our podcast producer Aaron is kind of up in arms about this, that if you count the NBA Cup, they're not actually on a 15-game winning streak, but the league doesn't count it, so we're not going to count it either. It doesn't matter. What matters is you get Oklahoma City's #1 defense versus the Cavs' #1 offense. I am pumped about this.
I think it's the game of the year. And I'm not just saying that, though, in part because I'm going to plug the column that I wrote that just popped on CBSSports.com on this very, very issue. And it's interesting because I called a bunch of folks and they didn't agree, because there's this residual, it's not disrespect, but lack of proper respect that is assigned to the Cavs. That's not true for the Thunder. Everybody thinks the Thunder are amazing. The Thunder haven't won anything, just like this Cavs team. Let me also throw in, John, I don't know if you saw this, they're each undefeated against the other conference. The Cavs haven't lost to the Western Conference, and the Thunder haven't lost to the Eastern Conference. I think it's 10-0 and 11-0, respectively. It's an amazing game, and the NBA is obviously like pumping this up. They're sending out stats. Another thing I did not know is that there are, I think, 5 or 6 players this century who have, in each of their first 8 years in the NBA, averaged 20 or more points per game. One of them is LeBron James. One of them is Kevin Durant. One of them is Carmelo Anthony. One of them is Joel Embiid, who's on a long timeline Horizon team. And the other is Donovan Mitchell. Just a reminder, this guy, I think, doesn't get the superstar level credit he deserves. But guess what, folks? This is an amazing basketball player. The Cavs also have an incredible player fronting their team just the way the Thunder do in SGA. So on every level, I'm with you. It's the game of the year. John, you gave us some of the reasons. It's literally a historically great game at this point of the season. And I'll just add, you can read more at CBSSports.com by Bill Ryder. I'll just add that I think the Cavs don't get the credit they deserve for being one of the two teams, guys, in a game that's this good.
Yeah, Bill, I mean, you bring up the lack of credit the Cavs are getting. I would point out that they haven't just won 10 games in a row. They've won 10 games in a row by double digits, right? Like, they're not just beating teams. They are blowing them out. They're running them off the floor. It feels like they found the perfect recipe for the core that they have. Now that Evan Mobley is like a somewhat viable three-point threat, and more importantly, he's like a very viable ball handler for them, suddenly they're kind of the perfect team to go up against this Thunder defense. Because what the Thunder do better than any defense, not only this year, but really at any point in recent NBA history, is generate turnovers. The way you generate turnovers is by attacking weak ball handlers and jumping into passing lanes. Well, the Cavs don't really have weak ball handlers. It's Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley, who are all playing some of the best basketball of their career. And the Cavs aren't whipping the ball around, right? Like, they're not like the Warriors where they're careless in search of high-value shots at the rim. They're methodical. They're willing to play slow. They're going to test this Thunder defense in a way that no offense except maybe Boston has. Now, the Thunder passed their Boston test on Sunday. They held the Celtics to, I think it was 8 made field goals in the second half compared to 10 turnovers. The Thunder have passed
points
every
in the second
test they've
half.
gotten. They beat the Knicks on Friday. They beat the Celtics on Sunday. This is just the latest for them. They have passed every test thus far. This is going to be a really good litmus test for both teams in case they meet up in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, it's kind of like the Spider-Man meme. These teams are very similar in that, you have Oklahoma City #1 in defense, and then 8th in offense, and then the inverse for the Cavs, who are #1 in offense, and then 7th in defense. And then here's the other thing: the best home record in the NBA is the Cavs. Well, the Oklahoma City Thunder are tied for the best away record. So we're just looking at two juggernauts about to clash tonight. And I really do. We have talked about the NBA needing to promote these teams. I think they've done a pretty good job with this game. Who do we like tonight? Let's do predictions. Bill, you go first.
All right, so I'm also going to throw this nugget out there by way of a prediction. I feel bad picking either team to lose. If the Cavs win this game, they are on track to win 73 games this year. That is the math. And that literally is on pace to tie for the best season in the history of the regular season with the Warriors. And I know it's hard to sort of maintain that level through 82 games, but the only way you do it is you do it the whole year, right? And it's incredible how good they are. I'm going to go Cleveland. And I don't know who's going to win this game because they're both outstanding, and both these teams I think are good enough to win an NBA title this year. Obviously, it's a one-off, but I for all the reasons both of you have outlined, I like the matchup. I like where the game's being played. I like that. I think the Cavs are a little under the radar. I know they have a chip on their shoulder talking to people there. Give me Cleveland in a barn burner.
I'm going to take the Thunder, and I'm going to do it largely because of what I saw on Sunday. I think that second half the Thunder played against the Celtics was the best half I've seen anybody play all year, right? Like, my reasoning for leaning Cleveland, if I was going to do that, would have been the turnovers, right? The Cavs don't turn the ball over. The Thunder turn the ball over a ton on defense. Well, the Celtics turned the ball over even less than the Cavs, and we saw what happened to them on Sunday. I'm struggling to find a reason why things will be any different. So give me the Thunder. The Thunder, I think, are the best team in the NBA, and they'll show it tonight.
I think they're the best team in the NBA too. Cavs favored by 2.5, depending on where you're looking here. They are at home. I want to pick the Cavs. I really do. I'm going to go with the Thunder just because I've been all over the Thunder all season. And I think the tiebreaker for me is just SGA. SGA is playing out of his head right now. He's going to be the best player on the floor. On a floor that's going to have a lot of great players, he's going to be the best guy. If they do win this game, though, tonight, if the Thunder win this game, I don't know when they lose next. They're at the Knicks on Friday, then at the Wiz, then at the Sixers, long timeline team, and then they're home again. We get the rematch of the Cavs. So could be a second. Maybe it's that Cavs game. Who knows? But yeah, I'll take the Thunder tonight. One more quick break, and then on the other side, we'll wrap up the show as we always do with Team of the Night that's coming up. This is BTA on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Here's our Team of the Night leaderboard. You can see the Kings there, LOL, with the most selections at 5. The Sixers somehow have 4 selections. We should mention for people who are maybe just joining us on the program that our Team of the Night isn't always a positives. Sometimes we do it with our tongue firmly planted in our cheek. We like to have a little bit of fun with it. Sometimes it's a little bit sarcastic. Most of them tend to be earnest and genuine, but not all of them. We're going to go to Sam here for the first Team of the Night from him.
Yeah, give me the Miami Heat. On Monday, they blow a 17-point fourth quarter lead in Sacramento. You think, oh no, we've played double overtime. We're going to be exhausted. We're going to be emotionally drained. No, they just come out and they kill the Warriors on their home floor, despite Stephen Curry having a huge game. It was just a very Heatsy win, right? Where like they don't have to worry about the same, exhaustion. They're so well conditioned. They're not a team that's going to get emotionally distracted by a big comeback loss. Nope, they just come out, take care of business. Huge win for them.
I will take the Denver Nuggets in the loss. Hell of a fight. It was close until the end, and very quickly, maybe uncracked a little bit of a life hack here against the Celtics. If you're not as good as they are, and you're not when Nikola Jokic isn't playing, just try to shoot as many 3-point shots as Boston is, and hope you get lucky on that night, because that's what they did right up until the end when that game sort of got away from them. That was a nice fight by Denver, and nice to see some pluckishness from some guys who need to step up when their big guys actually playing.
That's a really good example of Team of the Night isn't always because you got a W and played well. And we also love a great loss on this show, so that's a good one, Denver Nuggets. I'm going to take the Atlanta Hawks, who had a buzzer beater at the Jazz last night. Trae Young hit one from half court that was ridiculous. The Hawks continue to be just like a fun watch and a hard out, and congratulations to the Hawks. That's going to do it for us today, but we're going to be back at it tonight. As I mentioned, Oklahoma City against the Cavs tonight is a massive, massive game. We're all super excited about it. Bill and I are going to be on CBS Sports HQ right after the game, and then Sam and I will be live on YouTube. You can find us at Beyond the Arc CBS. Come and join us after the game. We're going to break down that game. That should be a really good one. But for now, for our NBA insider Bill Ryder, for Sam Quinn from CBSSports.com, I'm John Gonzalez. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.